At this point, Pokemon is as common a thing as Mickey Mouse and is known throughout the world. Between video games, anime, movies, card games, and merchandise, it's no wonder it's the highest grossing media franchise, beating the mouse by about $35 billion. However, every giant can make failures. Whether it's been critically or financially, every company makes some. To me, the biggest failure Pokemon ever made was Pokemon Sun and Moon. It felt too bare bones, some of the concepts were lazy, and the creation of the Elite Four at the end felt like a lame way to end a game that tried to be so different. So, I booted up a copy of Ultra Sun in order to ask the question, was Generation 7 really the worst Pokemon mainline game ever? Or can a year's worth of work redeem the whole generation? Welcome back to Nostalgia, where we see if a game lives up to its hype, or if it's only remembered through rose-tinted glasses. Full disclosure, I've tried to play this game 3 times already up to this playthrough, and have stopped before I've even gotten off the first island, so I already have a bit of a sour opinion of this game. Without further ado, let's take it to 3DS's 2017 release of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. Pokemon's gameplay is much the same as it's always been. We get a Pokemon from the Professor, get some Pokeballs, and catch a ton of wacky and zany characters and become the champion of a region. However, this generation tried to break the mold a bit more than any other game in the mainline series. Instead of gyms, we got trials. The first part of a trial is likely some task such as catching a Rattatas, fishing, making soup, or completing a puzzle. The puzzle aspect can be very common at the start of the gyms, but we'll have a lot more freedom in what you can do. However, the biggest changes is the bosses. Instead of fighting gym leaders, we fight totem Pokemon. There are 8 totem Pokemon and 1 raid den Pokemon, but we'll get into the raid den a little bit later. The totem Pokemon are huge versions of Pokemon. Depending on which totem it is, they can get a buff either to their attack, their defenses, and in some of the later matches, every stat they have. On the second turn, they'll call in an ally Pokemon, and sometimes, if you KO the first ally Pokemon, they'll bring in another one, creating a very interesting 2v1 scenario. It makes some weaker moves a little bit better, such as Swift and Rock Slide, because they target both Pokemon on your opponent's side. It causes you to have to be a little bit better with threat assessment during the fight as well. Sure, you might be able to KO the totem Pokemon, but how big of a threat is the helper? Some of the helper Pokemon can even heal the totem Pokemon, which makes them all the scary. The next big change was bringing in Z moves. These are one-time items that work like gems from Generation 5, but you can pick when to trigger them. You have to have an attack that shares a type with a Z crystal, or a specific move if it's a species-specific crystal. If you use them for non-attacking moves, you'll get a stat buff, almost mimicking how the totem Pokemon work. For instance, Z-move Splash raises the user's attack 3 stages, whereas Destiny Bond makes the Pokemon that used it the center of attention, making it more likely to be knocked out. However, a damaging move checks the power of the attack and the attack type in order to transform and make it do more damage. So say we use Thunderbolt as the base move. The attack will become a special attacking move and have a base power of 175. They can also attack through Protect, but will only do about 25% damage. There's 1 crystal for each type, and 17 crystal for specific Pokemon, making 35 different crystals. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are almost the exact same until you get off of the 3rd island. However, this feels like the first game where you're not the main character of your story. If anything, the main character feels like a foil to the 3 other characters you meet in this adventure. For Lily, you act as a bodyguard of sorts to help protect Nebby, a Pokemon she ended up stealing to protect from her mother. Hao, who uses apathy to avoid feeling trapped behind the fact that he's the grandson of a great kahuna, Hala. And Gladion, who went on a journey to try to grow strong enough to protect his family. Once you get to Aether Paradise after the 3rd island, this is where the story gets a bit weird. Colress, yes, the Team Plasma member from Black 2 and White 2, has helped Lusamine create a chain to try and tame Necrozma, an Ultra Beast that has stolen the light out of a parallel universe. Eventually, with the Ultra Recon Squad, you borrow either a Solgaleo or a Lunala from them, so that you may track down their dimension and stop Necrozma from stealing Alola's light. After you get to their parallel universe, everything's strange. It's a very overdeveloped city with only skyscrapers and everything's dark. The homes are bare, and everyone has either abandoned the city or are hiding in their homes. After walking a little bit through the city, you start climbing up a lighthouse to find the Pokemon known as Ultra Necrozma. This fight is legitimately the hardest fight I've ever had in a Pokemon game. He starts at level 60, gets a stat boost to every stat, and has some crazy powerful moves. My first time fighting him, I was around level 50, and I got one hit KO'd by every attack. The next time I fought him, I was level 60, and he still one-shotted my entire team. The only way I was able to beat him was with a cheeky strategy using a Focus-Sashed Endeavored Wishy-Washy and a Galarian Persian to fake him out. After beating Necrozma, you head to the newly built Pokemon League on top of Ula Ula Island. As you make your way up, you run into a Necrozma, who is back to their default form after you beat them, and a Gladian who wants to show you how strong he's become. They changed the Elite Four this time. They took out Hala and added Blaine, the Steel Trial Keeper that we met during the Electric Trial. The Elite Four in this game consists of Steel, Rock, Ghost, and Flying. Each trainer has 5 Pokemon, all being level 56, with their ace being 57, with a Z move of their type. They have a solid spread of secondary typings, and it can actually be a little difficult if you weren't prepared for them. After beating the Elite Four, you ascend to the throne room, where the first champion of Alola is going to be crowned. Kukui comes out from behind the throne telling you that he's the final obstacle standing in your way. Or, he'd like to, but Hao also made it to the top. You both started your island journey on the same day. You went to each of the islands together. You even fought against Aether Paradise together. Who's a better opponent than the first friend you made on Alola? Hao's team consists of a Raichu, Flareon, Tauros, Noivern, Crabominable, and a Primarina. His team's a bit disappointing in the fact that there's only 3 new Pokemon from this generation, and one of them's in Alolan form. The team, however, is very fast and loves to hit hard. As a note, the evolution on his team will always be whatever is strongest against your starter, and his ace will be whatever was weakest against your starter. I started with Rowlet, so he's a Primarina as his ace. His team does a great job of having a lot of type coverage. Other than his Flareon being a very weak Mon, and his Primarina only having 3 moves, it doesn't matter what starter you pick, for some reason his ace only ever has 3 moves. His team is super scary. Alolan Raichu has 110 base speed, 95 special attack, and has Thunderbolt, Psychic, Focus Blast, and Quick Attack. Tauros again has 110 speed with 100 base attack, with Zen Headbutt, Iron Head, Earthquake, and Double Edge. Noivern has 123 speed with 97 special attack, and has Dragon Pulse, Air Slash, Dark Pulse, and Super Fang to half the health of any specially defensive Pokemon. Crabominable might not be fast, but 132 attack stat is horrifying when it fires off a Power-Up Punch, Ice Hammer, Stone Edge, or a Dizzy Punch. His team's well constructed and does huge damage, has a ton of type coverage, and could really shred through any team that's not prepared for him. Music-wise, Pokemon has always been fantastic and has a banger of an OST. My personal favorite song is Guzma's theme. The beat is super simple but full of energy the whole way through, and for some reason the vocals always remind me of someone trying to feel the beat before they freestyle, but never really get into it. This game really took on a joyous soundtrack that is packed full of energy. Anything dealing with the Alola region is very warm and inviting. However, the interesting part of the soundtrack are the Ultra Recon themes. They're very synth-based with a lot of discharging electricity, and it gives off a future motif that's very, very strange when compared to most of the Pokemon tracks in this game. I will say the Champions theme I'm a little conflicted on. It's very cute that it alludes to the title screen, truly showing you how far you've grown with Hao, but it doesn't have a lot of the grandiose that some of the other Champion fights have. And maybe that's the point. I doubt the first time Cynthia fought to become the champion of Sinnoh, she had a really good theme song. And we know theme music is specific for each champion, as Older and Iris themselves have very different themes from one another. With this being Elio's first win as champion, maybe a few years later he grows and finds his own theme song, and it's just as good. But we won't know that without a sequel or another game set after his journey in Alola. I know I could have gotten more out of this Pokemon title. I admittedly only did the main campaign, when you become the champion, but I know there's at least 2 other subplots, one with the Rainbow Rockets and one with Looker and the Ultra Beasts. But I wanted to save those for another time, as they likely would have added a few more hours to my playthrough. All things considered, it took me about 30 hours to beat the base story of Pokemon Ultra Sun, and from what I saw, it's about 30 hours more of content from the last 2 plots that I was talking about, which is wild to me. Who knows, we might get a part 2 for the post-game. Anyways, let's do the breakdown of how much this costs. Right now, you can pick up Ultra Moon for about $45 USD and Ultra Sun for about $43 USD. Unfortunately, the 3DS is the only way you can really play this game right now, but with that in mind, Ultra Sun and Moon costs $1.50 per hour, and Ultra Sun costs $1.43 per hour. And if the game truly has another 30 hours worth of content, it's less than $1 per hour. At this price, and even at the $1.50, I'd highly suggest this Pokemon game. The only real con is that it's very cutscene heavy, and it can feel like a slog if you're just trying to get through a Pokemon adventure. But if you want to see a solid coming-of-age story, Ultra Sun and Moon gets 2 thumbs up. In conclusion, Ultra Sun actually did a lot to change my mind on Generation 7. Some of it might have been that Sun and Moon came out in a time where I was having a rough bit of it. I just moved to a new state and I was having a hard time getting my roots down, so maybe a tale of a kid moving to Alola and making friends might not have resonated with me. However, my opinion of this game has changed. Somehow in a year, they made the challenges more interesting, changed around some of the trials to keep it fresh. I don't know if it was the time I spent away from this generation, or that Ultra Sun is just so much better, but I think I really was too hard of this game. Anyways, that's all for this episode. I'll see you guys next month, and here's our hint to what we will be playing next time. Take it easy, and peace out.